The emergency beacon pierced through the stormy night, its rhythmic pulse drawing Dr. Tessa Reynolds deeper into the abandoned Nexus research complex. Rain lashed against broken windows as she navigated the debris-strewn corridors, her medkit clutched tightly against her chest. The facility had been empty for months since the Meridian incident strained human-alien relations, but that signal, it wasn't human standard. Thunder cracked overhead as Tessa followed the strengthening signal to sublevel 3. Her breath caught in her throat at what she found there, two figures huddled in the corner of an old lab, one protectively curled around the other. Their alabaster skin with subtle shifting colors like an opal identified them immediately as Viridians, the species that had cut off all contact with Earth after the incident. The larger figure, clearly the mother, raised her head weakly. The delicate ridges along her temples darkened with stress, a physiological response Tessa recognized from her xenobiology studies. The smaller one, a child, lay unnaturally still. "Please," the mother whispered in halting English, "help her." Tessa's medical training kicked in before politics could interfere. She rushed forward, already pulling out her diagnostic scanner. The child's vital signs were critical, severe dehydration complicated by exposure to Earth's atmosphere. The mother wasn't much better off. "I'm Dr. Reynolds, Tessa," she said softly, administering emergency oxygen. "What are your names?" "I am Nira," the mother managed between labored breaths. "My daughter. Asha." "You're safe now," Tessa assured them, though she knew it wasn't entirely true. Harboring Viridian refugees was a serious offense since the treaties collapsed. But she wouldn't, turn them away. As she worked to stabilize them through the night, Nira's story emerged in fragments. They had fled their homeworld after Asha's father, a prominent scientist, was arrested for opposing the military regime that had taken control. He had discovered something important, something that had gotten him killed. Now they were hunted, with nowhere else to turn. By dawn, Tessa had made her decision. Her small medical practice on the outskirts of New Seattle had a hidden basement level, a relic of earlier, paranoid times. It would do for now. "I'm going to help you," she told Nira as she prepared them for transport. "But you have to trust me completely. Can you do that?" The color rippling beneath Nira's skin steadied to a deep azure, a sign of intense emotion that Tessa had only read about in medical texts. "We trust you, Dr. Reynolds." She stroked Asha's forehead gently. "You are different from what they told us about humans." Tessa managed a small smile as she activated her vehicle's camouflage systems. "Maybe that's something both our peoples need to learn." She glanced at her rearview display, watching the research complex recede into the distance. Sometimes hope comes from the most unexpected places. As they drove through the breaking dawn, Tessa's mind raced with plans and contingencies. She would need supplies, secure communications, trusted contacts. The risks were enormous, to her career, her freedom, possibly her life. But looking at Asha's sleeping form in the back seat, seeing the trust in Nira's otherworldly eyes, she knew she had made the right choice. What she couldn't know, was that this night would change not just 3 lives, but the future of 2 species. Sometimes the greatest journeys begin with a simple choice to help someone in need. Far above them, the storm clouds finally began to break, letting the first rays of sunrise paint the sky in colors that seemed to mirror the subtle shifting hues of Nira's skin. A new day was dawning, in more ways than one. 3 weeks had passed since Tessa brought Nira and Asha into her hidden basement clinic. The space, originally designed as a fallout shelter, had become a sanctuary. Tessa had transformed it with medical equipment salvaged from her practice upstairs, creating a makeshift recovery room that could pass basic scans. Asha's condition had improved significantly. The young alien child now spent her days drawing intricate patterns with the art supplies Tessa had brought her, her skin shifting with subtle colors as she concentrated. She was learning English rapidly, though she spoke it with a melodic accent that made even simple words sound like music. But Neera grew increasingly restless. Tessa often found her pacing the confined space, her skin rippling with worry. "There's something wrong on our world," she confided one evening as they shared a meal. "Before my husband's death, he discovered a pattern in our medical data. Children were falling ill with symptoms that made no sense." Tessa leaned forward, her doctor's instincts alert. "What kind of symptoms?" "It begins with exhaustion, then progresses to organ failure within weeks. The cases were isolated at first, but they're spreading." Neera's voice dropped to a whisper. "The military regime is covering it up. That's what got him killed, he was going to expose everything." A chill ran down Tessa's spine. "Do you have his research?" Neera nodded, pulling out a small data crystal from a hidden pocket. "He gave it to me the night they came for him. I haven't been able to decode it fully, but I know it's important." Their conversation was interrupted by a sharp knock from upstairs. Tessa's heart stopped, her practice was closed for the evening. Through the security feed, she saw two figures in dark uniforms standing at her door. Earth Security Force. "Stay here," she whispered, making sure the basement's concealment systems were active. "Don't make a sound." Tessa climbed the stairs, straightened her coat, and opened the door with practiced casualness. "Can I help you?" "Dr. Reynolds?" The taller agent showed his credentials. "I'm Agent Foster. This is Agent Reed. We're investigating unusual power signatures in this area. Mind if we take a look around?" "Of course not," Tessa replied, her heart pounding but her voice steady. "Though I should warn you, some of my medical equipment can give off unusual readings. I treat some rare conditions." The agent swept through her practice methodically, their scanners humming. Tessa watched them, maintaining a professional smile while her mind raced through contingency plans. The basement's shielding should hold, but if it didn't? "Doctor," Agent Reed called from her supply room. "Can you explain these atmospheric regulators? They're rated for non-human physiology." "I have a research license," Tessa answered smoothly, pulling up the documentation on her tablet. "I study comparative xenobiology. The regulators help simulate different atmospheric conditions for my experiments." The agents exchanged looks but seemed satisfied with her explanation. As they prepared to leave, Foster paused. "One more thing, Doctor. If you notice anything unusual, any unexpected visitors, you'll report it immediately, won't you?" "Of course," Tessa smiled. "We all have to do our part." After they left, Tessa slumped against the wall, her hands shaking. When she returned to the basement, she found Neera holding Asha tightly, their skin almost white with fear. "They're looking for us," Neera whispered. "Yes," Tessa admitted. "But they won't find you. I promise." She sat down beside them, her mind already forming new plans. "But we need to understand what's on that data crystal. Whatever your husband found, it's big enough that both our governments want it buried." Asha looked up from her mother's embrace. "Can you help us, Dr. Tessa?" Looking into those alien yet trusting eyes, Tessa felt her resolve strengthen. "Yes, sweetie. We're going to help each other." She turned to Neera. "I have a friend, a data specialist who works off the grid. She might be able to decode the crystal. But reaching her means leaving the safety of this place. Are you willing to take that risk?" Neera's skin rippled with determination. "To save our people? To justify my husband's sacrifice?" "Yes." Tessa nodded, already mentally preparing for what would come next. The agent's visit had made one thing clear: time was running out. Whatever was on that crystal, whatever was happening to the children on Neera's world, it was all connected. And somehow, they had to uncover the truth before it was too late. Outside, the sun was setting over New Seattle, casting long shadows across the city. Soon, those shadows would hide three unlikely allies as they sought answers that could change everything. But for now, they waited, drawing strength from each other and the trust they had built in these hidden moments. The old maintenance tunnels beneath New Seattle hadn't been used in decades, their existence nearly forgotten in the rush of progress above. Tessa led her small group through the darkness, guided by ancient maintenance markers and her friend's cryptic directions. Behind her, Neera carried a sleeping Asha, their skin muted to match the shadows around them. How much further? Neera whispered, her voice barely audible over the distant rumble of the city above. Almost there, Tessa replied, checking the coordinates on her encrypted tablet. Raven's particular about security. These tunnels are old, but they're safe from surveillance. They emerged into a larger chamber that had once been a subway maintenance hub. Banks of old computers lined the walls, their screens casting a pale blue glow across the space. A figure sat among them, fingers dancing across multiple keyboards. "You're late," Raven said without turning around. Her dark hair was streaked with silver, her fingers adorned with neural interface rings. "And you brought guests. Interesting ones." "We need your help," Tessa said, stepping forward. "It's about the data crystal." Raven finally turned, her cybernetic eyes scanning the group. She showed no surprise at the alien's appearance. "The one that's got both Earth security and the Viridian military in an uproar? Must be something special." Neera stepped forward, her skin rippling with urgency. "My husband died protecting this information. Children are dying, and our government is hiding the truth." "Truth's my specialty," Raven said, holding out her hand for the crystal. "But decoding this won't be cheap. Or quick." A sudden noise from above made them all freeze. Footsteps echoed through the tunnels, multiple sets, moving with purpose. "We've got company," Raven muttered, her fingers flying across keyboards. "ESF tactical team, by the sound of it. Someone must have tracked you." "Impossible," Tessa breathed. Tessa's backup facility was little more than an abandoned environmental research station on the outskirts of the city, but its sophisticated atmospheric controls made it perfect for treating Asha. The young alien child lay in a sealed chamber while Tessa analyzed her vital signs, her skin almost translucent now as the illness progressed. Neera hadn't left her daughter's side for 3 days, her own skin reflecting the gray pallor of exhaustion. She pressed her hand against the chamber's clear wall, watching Asha's labored breathing. The other children, they didn't survive past this stage. "Asha will," Tessa said firmly, studying the latest test results. "Look at this." She pointed to a complex molecular diagram on her screen. "The illness isn't natural. It's engineered, designed to target specific genetic markers." "But why?" Her tablet chimed, a secure message from Raven. The data specialist had gone to ground after their narrow escape, but her decoded fragments from the crystal were finally coming through. "Project Terraform," Tessa read aloud, her eyes widening. "They were experimenting with atmospheric modification on both Earth and your world. Testing ways to make each planet more habitable for the other species." "Without consent," Neera added bitterly. "My husband discovered that the military was using isolated communities as test subjects. The children were most vulnerable to the changes." A sudden alarm from Asha's chamber made them both jump. Her vital signs were dropping rapidly, her small body convulsing. "No!" Neera cried, but Tessa was already moving, injecting a stabilizing compound into the chamber's medical system. Slowly, agonizingly, Asha's reading steadied. "That was too close," Tessa whispered, her hands shaking. She turned to her research again with renewed urgency. "The terraforming changes the atmospheric composition at a molecular level. The children's bodies can't adapt fast enough, so their organs begin to fail." "But why are they still proceeding with it?" Neera demanded. "Knowing it kills children?" Before Tessa could answer, the facility's perimeter alarm activated. On the security feed, they saw a vehicle approaching, one they recognized. "Raven?" Tessa breathed in disbelief. What is she doing here? The data specialist burst in minutes later, her neural interfaces glowing with urgency. They're coming. Both sides. I found something they really didn't want found. She connected directly to Tessa's system, and new data flooded the screens. The terraforming wasn't just an experiment. It was preparation. The military leaders on both sides are planning for total war. They want to make each planet uninhabitable for the enemy species. Using our own children as test subjects, Neera said, her voice breaking. While they perfect their weapon. But there's more, Raven continued. The molecular changes, they're reversible. Your husband found the key, Neera. It's in the crystal's core data. A counteragent that could stop the terraforming process and save the children. But we need both human and Viridian biological material to synthesize it. Tessa looked at Asha's chamber, then at her medical supplies. We have everything we need right here. Not quite, Raven corrected. The formula needs to be processed in a zero-gravity environment. The molecular bonds won't form properly otherwise. A new alarm blared. Multiple vehicles were approaching now, Earth Security Force and what looked like Viridian military craft, somehow working together. They know, Raven said grimly. They know we've figured it out. We have maybe 10 minutes. Tessa's mind raced. The old space elevator. It's 3 kilometers from here. Still maintained for cargo transport. We'd never make it, Neera said, but her skin was already shifting with hope. We might, Raven countered, her fingers flying across interfaces. I can hack the transport systems, create a diversion. But someone needs to stay behind to coordinate it. They all knew what that meant. Raven managed a tight smile. Hey, this is what I do. Just make it count. Tessa quickly gathered the medical supplies they'd need while Neera prepared Asha's portable life support. The child stirred briefly, reaching out a weak hand. Dr. Tessa, she whispered. Are we going to the stars? Tessa took her small hand, fighting back tears. Yes, sweetheart. We're going to the stars to make you better. To make everyone better. Outside, they could hear approaching vehicles. Raven was already at her systems, fingers dancing across keyboards. Go. Now. Take the maintenance tunnel. I'll keep them busy. As they fled into the night, carrying precious medical samples and an even more precious child, Tessa's heart pounded with equal parts fear and determination. They weren't just running for their lives now, they were running for the lives of countless children on 2 worlds. Behind them, Raven's voice came through their comm unit one last time, make them remember this. Make them remember that when both sides tried to use children as weapons, it was a human and a Viridian who proved we could be better. Together. The space elevator's cargo pod hummed as it rose through Earth's atmosphere, carrying its desperate passengers toward the stars. Inside, Tessa monitored Asha's vital signs while Neera worked to stabilize the medical samples they'd brought. They had exactly one chance to synthesize the cure in zero gravity. Life support holding, Tessa reported, though she could see Asha's condition deteriorating. The child's skin had become almost transparent, her breathing shallow. Just hold on, sweetheart. We're almost there. Through the pod's windows, they watched Earth shrink below them. But they weren't alone in their ascent. Military vessels, both human and Viridian, were converging on their position. They won't fire, Neera said, though her skin rippled with uncertainty. Not with their secret at stake. They'd have to explain too much. The cargo pod shuddered as it reached the orbital transfer station. As soon as they docked, Tessa and Neera sprang into action, transferring their precious cargo into the station's medical lab. They had mere minutes before security forces would reach them. The formula, Tessa said, pulling up the decoded data from Neera's husband. In zero gravity, the molecular bonds should An explosion rocked the station. Through the observation window, they saw military ships docking. "Keep working," Neera urged. "I'll buy us time." Before Tessa could protest, Neera was gone, sealing the lab door behind her. Tessa forced herself to focus on the delicate process of combining human and Viridian biological material in the zero-gravity chamber. Each step had to be perfect. As she worked, she could hear shouting in the corridor outside, the sound of confrontation. "Dr. Tessa?"